I am your host, Robert Rowe, and you are listening to Awake Radio.
The podcast they don't want you to hear.
Today, before I get into our episode, I want to take a bit of time to answer a couple of questions that I've received via email. It's important for me to do this because I think it helps ensure the continuity of this show, and it helps you to better understand what Awake Radio is all about. So without further ado, here is our first question from Sheila A. Robert, your show is enlightening and very informative. However, you never discuss topics of real seriousness like the Illuminati, NWO, and the likes. Why is that? Well, Sheila, there are two reasons I don't discuss the Illuminati, and the first is that I've researched this topic, and I have found absolutely no credible and verifiable information that it even exists. I'm not going to waste my time discussing an organization that may or may not exist, except in the imaginations of various conspiracy theorists who feed off of each other's information and use that information to give credibility to their assertions. Now, I want to make it very clear what I'm saying here. I am not saying the Illuminati does not exist, and I am not saying that the information put out there by the various people and organizations who believe they exist is wrong or inaccurate. All I'm saying is that I cannot find any information that I can verify as factual. If the Illuminati exists, then they have certainly done a very good job at covering their tracks and leaving nothing more than a few clues behind. The second is that if the Illuminati exists, since I cannot find any verifiable information about them, anything that I present on this show would be nothing more than speculation at best. Since the core of this show is to educate and share facts as they are known, I would be doing my listeners a disservice. I will not engage in idle speculation. If I ever find credible and verifiable information regarding the Illuminati, I promise I will share it with you. As for the NWO, quite frankly, there are a lot of people out there with a lot more knowledge on that subject than I possess. You must remember, I am only one man. I cannot research everything. There just aren't enough hours in the day to do so. So I'm going to let those who have better information and who are better informed on that topic share their information with you, and you can decide for yourselves whether that information is credible. And this is true with any topic. I'm not going to present information about topics I know little about. All right, next question. Robert, your episode on Watertown, Massachusetts sucks. Those people were right to allow the search of their homes. The police were attempting to catch a terrorist. Don't you think that is sufficient grounds to temporarily suspend constitutional rights? You are an angry nutcase who is getting in the way of social progress. From Terry B. Well, all right, thank you for your comments and your question, Terry. And you are correct, I am angry. As I stated in that episode, the people were correct to allow the police, to search their homes. When there's a gun pointed at your head, you allow the wielder of that gun to do whatever they want. After they leave, you go after them in court. However, I disagree with your assertion that the bombers were terrorists. But of course, this is really semantics. The fact is, there is no police force on any level in this country that has the right to search your house without a warrant lacking probable cause. This incident was not sufficient, to use your word, to violate the people's constitutional rights. The only time I believe it is appropriate for the government to search any house without a warrant or without probable cause is if there is an occupying army on United States soil. So for the sake of argument, I'll concede your point that these boys were terrorists. But terrorists are not an army. They aren't even soldiers. They are just sick bastards who commit crimes with the intention of causing fear. And then they use that fear to further an agenda. Since they are not an army, the suspension of constitutional rights does not apply. Now, if the searching parties had knocked on each door and politely asked each citizen if they could search their house looking for the suspects, and the citizens agreed, I would have no problem. But they didn't. These people forced their search at gunpoint using terror tactics to accomplish their goals. And those goals created nothing more than an atmosphere of fear. They then used this fear to further their agenda. Wait. That complicates things even more, doesn't it? It seems that the police forces in Watertown in this particular incident were the real terrorists. All right, third question. I love Awake Radio and truly look forward to your future episodes. You're a bit crazy, and you yell and cuss too much in some episodes. Will you please stop doing so? It only cheapens your show. Amy R. Thank you, Amy, for your comments and your kind words. I have received many comments about my cussing and my yelling, and the short answer is no, I won't quit doing so. And it's not because I don't respect my listeners, but because I'm not going to restrict my passion. There are some subjects about which I am more passionate than others. Sometimes, like in the case of the Idaho moms who had their children taken from them because they are pro-marijuana activists, I just get very worked up about the issue, and I allow my passion to freely express itself. And sometimes I cuss because there just aren't more appropriate words to express how I truly feel. And sometimes I yell because it's necessary to get the point across. And sometimes I'm just plain angry about the situation and I want to yell about it. I have often mentioned that freedom of speech does not give us license to say what we want whenever we want. And I still hold this to be true. With great freedom comes great responsibility. I have also mentioned that it is incumbent upon all of us to be polite in our conversations and dialogues with each other. And that is true also. However, in all things there is a loophole. In this case, the loophole is that I am not having a dialogue or discussion with anyone. I am expressing my opinions. This is a monologue. It is an expression and nothing more. This is so because there is no guarantee that anybody will actually listen to the episodes I produce. I am not speaking to anyone nor to everyone. When I record an episode, I am recording my thoughts and opinions, and that's all. If you choose to listen to those thoughts and opinions, you do so at your own risk. Additionally, I make sure to inform any potential listeners that the episode they are about to listen to may contain language that may be of offensive nature to some people. All right, that's it for the questions for today. In a future episode, I'll answer some more. But for now, let's get down to the business of today's two topics. The first of which is freedom even worth it anymore? Now, this question needs to be asked. There are people who have dedicated their entire lives to the propagation of freedom in the United States. Yet the results of the 2012 election seem to make it clear that the people of the United States are no longer interested in freedom. In order to discover the answer to this question, we must first answer the question, what is freedom? Freedom, as defined by dictionary.com, is the state of being free or at liberty rather than in confinement or under physical restraint, as in he won his freedom after retrial. It is exemption from external control or interference or regulation. Think about that. Exemption from external control, interference, or regulation. It is the power to determine action without restraint. It is political or national independence. It is personal liberty as opposed to bondage or slavery. So it appears that freedom happens to come in many different forms. So for purposes of answering the question of whether or not freedom is worth it anymore, the second, fourth, and fifth definitions will be the guide by which this is explored, as they are the most relevant to American freedoms and liberties. Freedom is a concept. It is not something that can be seen, felt, or observed by any of the physical senses. It is an experience. One can only observe it by experiencing it, and the results obtained by its practice. The results are not always nice and orderly as humans of recent times seem to prefer. Yet freedom allows for orderliness. Usually, though, it results in something that appears to be chaotic and disorderly. Freedom is a concept also that requires a very heavy price, and there is only one currency that freedom accepts, and that currency is blood. I know I've talked about this before. Now, sometimes that blood is innocent, think crimes, criminal activity, and sometimes that blood is a deliberate and purposeful spilling, think in terms of military. And that purposeful spilling is to protect freedom. Either way, freedom will have its payment, or it will take its benefits and go home. Now, freedom, in my opinion, is the most powerful of all human concepts. That's the reason that the price is so high. It is so powerful, in fact, that a little over 200 years ago, a small group of people decided to found an entire nation based on the principle of freedom. And that nation was called the United States of America. That nation would, in less than 200 years, become the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. Its influence spanned the entire globe. When America spoke, the rest of the world listened, and they adjusted their cultures and their political and economic strategies. The American military might was such that the rest of the world trembled in fear if America merely mentioned their displeasure with another country. Such was the might and respect America commanded. If a country was a friend of America, they rejoiced in the friendship, knowing that America was a country to be honored and revered. When America made a promise, it kept that promise. It protected its friends and made its enemies regret their poor decisions. By the year 2004, Common Era, America was experiencing a decline in respect and financial might. It was not something that could not be overcome with a little hard work and some sacrifice. But America had become so enamored with itself, it began to succumb to greed and apathy. A moral decay of its people began to take hold and rot its values. Americans, rather than fix the problem, decided it was easier just to whitewash over the problems and believed that eventually those problems would simply disappear. Unfortunately for America, the decay of American values and morals continued to erode away the people's will, and entertainment and ease were more desired than sacrifice and honor. Finally, this resulted in a financial breakdown of the American economic system in 2007. Americans were hurt. Americans lost a very large portion of the wealth that they had amassed over the decades and centuries. America was brought to her knees and struggling to find a way back onto her feet. But a new beacon of hope and change promised to lead America out of its doldrums and into a renewed prosperity. And Americans believed this beacon. They needed to believe this beacon. And they elected him as president to represent the American people to the rest of the world. Now, this new president first decided it was necessary to shame the American people by apologizing for the previous 233 years of its existence. The most powerful man on the planet, the American president, bowed before foreign kings and queens, not in humility, but rather in an admission of diminished American capacity and strength. The president enacted laws contrary to the concept of freedom and liberty. He actively pursued policy designed to restrict and destroy freedom in America. Using fear tactics and national security as his reasons, he systematically dismantled and shredded the Constitution of the United States of America and replaced it with a shell government over which he was the supreme leader. Those who dared to question him or declare to the rest of the world that these actions were immoral, illegal, and just plain wrong and contrary to the American values and culture, they were ridiculed. They were made to seem as if they were insane or worse. Some of these people were found dead of, well, let's say natural causes, while others just disappeared without a trace. Eventually, it was declared that anybody who opposed his government were terrorists. America became a nation gripped with fear and terror of its own government. A government that was supposed to protect the people's rights became a government which trampled the people's rights. By the year 2012, the people were extremely angry, and they were experiencing the greatest ideological division ever in the country's history. But there was hope. A new election cycle was at hand, and the people would have the opportunity to remove this tyrant who delivered only misery and slavery to his people. So on November 6, 2012, the American people went to the polls and voted their choice. They could choose between one of three people. They could choose a person who would take away their freedom and replace it with a false sense of security. Or they could choose a businessman who would allow large corporations to determine national policy, which would be most favorable to the corporations, of course, or a person who would restore freedom and liberty to the people. The people chose the enemy of freedom. On November 7, 2012, the question was raised, is freedom even worth it anymore? The people of America have declared, as long as you make it comfortable for us, we will accept your slavery and your bondage. Since that's what the American people have asked for, why should freedom be defended? The people have made it clear they are not interested in freedom. They are interested in possessions. They're interested in toys and recreation and entertainment. They want their MTV, and they don't want to be bothered with anything else. And this president will give the people exactly what they want. But as with freedom, there is a price to pay for the lifestyle of leisure and entertainment. And that price is slavery to the government. If this is what the majority of the people want, should we bother fighting for freedom? If after fighting several wars for freedom, the people are willing to just shuck it off on a whim simply so they can have a cell phone, should we consider that the people don't deserve freedom? Should we not let them have a few hundred years of slavery and tyranny so they can relearn the lesson that freedom has to be earned? Perhaps we should. The American people have become so apathetic and lazy and greedy that they have forgotten what America stands for. America does not stand for making a buck at the expense of another's dignity and health. It stands for everyone working together to make our own destinies and our own fortunes. It doesn't stand for governmental control over every aspect of our lives. What it does stand for is for people taking personal responsibility for their lives and the lives of their neighbors and their families. It doesn't stand for an elite class of people dominating over an underprivileged class. It stands for equality for every person. So maybe it's time for Americans to lose their freedom for a while. Make them earn it back. And they'll find out the hard way that the price of regaining it is going to be higher than the price they paid to get it the first time around. And there will be much bloodshed and tears in the next American Revolution. I guarantee that. So is freedom even worth it? Is it worth the blood and the sacrifice that a few will have to make in order to secure it for the rest? Should we bother trying to take back our freedoms for an ungrateful people? For some, the answer is a resounding yes, because they understand the nature of freedom. They respect freedom, and they are willing to pay the price for freedom. They know in their hearts that freedom is the natural condition in which man is supposed to exist. For others, the answer is a limp, maybe, because they have only a rudimentary understanding of freedom, and they aren't sure if they're willing to temporarily give up their toys and their leisure. They don't understand that those toys and their leisure time can and will be taken from them under the yoke of tyranny. For the rest, the answer is, I don't really care because it interferes with my TV time. They believe that as long as they can continue to be entertained by the mass media conglomerates and they have the ability to choose which programs to watch on their high-definition television sets, that they are free enough. Free enough. There's no such thing as free enough. Free enough is a lie. A person is either absolutely free or they exist under some form of tyranny. Either the rights of all people are absolute or they don't exist except in theory. All right, let's take a short break while we get to our next topic so I can tell you about a few good friends of mine from PreppingBlog.com and the Transegoist Daily Journal. PreppingBlog.com is a website and blog dedicated to the spreading and aggregating information about prepping, sustainable living, food storage, canning, survivalism, and preparedness topics. Their goal is not to spread fear about possible disasters that may occur, but to help people increase their personal state of readiness and to give information that can help build your mental preparedness toolbox along with your physical preparedness toolbox. PreppingBlog.com is operated and maintained by my friend Nate, a co-owner and operator of Prepper Outfitters LLC. Prepper Outfitters is a company based out of Hopkins, Minnesota, dedicated to providing high-quality survival and preparedness products at highly competitive prices. I'm having problems talking today. Currently, Prepper Outfitters is offering high-quality Mylar bags at discounted prices, so check them out at www.preppersblog.com. The Transegoist Daily Journal is a site with blogs and articles related to topics ranging from transegoism to freedom to agriculture and a whole lot more. It's a wonderful site with great information from a host of contributors such as myself. You can find the Transegoist Daily Journal by going to tdj.transegoism.us. While there, be sure to check out their store. They have great t-shirts, coffee mugs, and a lot of other cool items to purchase. Please consider making a purchase to help keep wonderful sites like these going. And finally, before we continue, I want to give a special shout out to Scott Hurt for his wonderful contributions to Awake Radio. As you all know, I was having some difficulty producing these episodes when my computer broke down. Scott stepped up to the plate and donated an old laptop to Awake Radio to help us continue producing this show. So, if you're ever on Awareness Act social network and you happen to see Scott Hurt online, make sure you offer your thanks to him for his support of Awake Radio. We all appreciate your help, Scott, and I personally want to offer you my most heartfelt and humble thank you. Second thing I want to talk about today is the Bill of Rights, or rather, the Bill of Lack of Rights. Since I'm running low on time, I'm going to go through these fairly quickly with limited commentary, so just try to keep up, alright? Now, we've recently celebrated Independence Day here in America. Congratulations, America, you're 237 years young. And to celebrate this accomplishment, this milestone, I'm going to discuss the Bill of Rights, and I'm going to go through each of the first 10 amendments of our Constitution and clearly delineate for you, dear listener, just exactly which of those rights we have lost or are in the process of losing. You may be surprised to know that as of today, July 9th, 2013, of the 10 rights defined in the Bill of Rights, we have only one that is still completely intact. All of the rest have been either totally dismantled or are currently being ripped to shreds right in front of us as we're watching our television sets and playing computer games. Now, I know I'm often called a wild-eyed conspiracy theorist, and I have been warning Americans for years now that we are in danger of losing our constitutional rights. I've told you all that it would be done in the name of safety and security. It would be done ostensibly to prevent criminals from using those rights to defend themselves in court. It would be done in a manner that would make people believe it's in their best interest. And you laughed at me. You all said, "Robert, you crazy commie bastard, you're just spouting nonsense. That can't happen here in America, so shut up and let me get back to my television show." On July 1st, we lost the right to freedom of speech when a judge ruled that the First Amendment has no authority. In a case brought before him, he ruled that a man using chalk to express his anti-Bank of America ideas on a sidewalk could not use the First Amendment as a defense because the First Amendment has no authority. First Amendment is gone, folks. The Second Amendment is all but gone, with the President signing all these EOs preventing the import of certain firearms as well as parts for repairing or building those firearms, and with a bill in front of Congress intended to limit the sale of gunpowder, and let's face it, with the extreme left working tirelessly to create more laws designed to circumvent the Second Amendment, it's all but dead. It is certainly on its deathbed. The Third Amendment is the only amendment completely intact at this time. However, I'm certain that this amendment will also be abused as soon as the President can figure out a way to do so. He'll probably require that all these foreign troops, which currently are estimated to outnumber the numbers of American troops that are on American soil at this time, be quartered in our homes. The Fourth Amendment went out the window with the NDAA and the Patriot Act, as we all know. Also, when the courts ruled that one does not have to be Mirandized, that sealed the fate of the Fourth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment appears to now only apply to government officials. If you think the Sixth Amendment is still applicable, I would refer you again to the NDAA and the Patriot Act, which state that the government can hold you indefinitely without trial or legal counsel or even food if they want to. They can even torture you. That will come up again later. The Seventh Amendment, while it is still technically there, and it is still technically practiced, it should be noted that a trial by jury is now merely a formality. With the rules of jurisprudence changing to disallow things like jury nullification, and with judges telling the juries which verdict they are supposed to pass down, it seems as if we only give the defendant a trial by jury just so people can watch it on television. So what about the Eighth Amendment? I refer you again to the torture statement above. Freedom from cruel and unusual punishment? Not anymore. Since the government has ruled that they have the authority to waterboard and perform other forms of torture, we are no longer protected by the Eighth Amendment. And finally, we come to the Ninth and Tenth Amendments. Yes, all those rights not enumerated in the Constitution are supposed to go to the people or to the states. But the government says you don't have them because there are none. That's right, the government has declared you don't have any rights that are not enumerated in the Constitution. They also believe that they have the supreme authority over the states. Well, I hate to tell them this, but the hierarchy of the United States is as follows: the people, the states, and at the bottom of the pile, the federal government. So you still think you have your freedoms, really? Why? Because the talking heads on CNN told you so? Because you get to vote on American Idol? You're a pathetic sheeple if you think that. Wake up. It's all gone. And you are doing nothing about it. I'm Robert Rowe. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions or comments regarding today's episode, or if you want to suggest a topic for a future episode, you may email me at rrowe@awarenessact.com. That's RROWE @awarenessact.com. Be sure to visit our friends at preppingblog.com and the Trans-Egoist Daily Journal. Tell them I sent you. And as always, I hope you have a great day.